for Javeayah Harris. Personally, there's some very harsh words that I would like to use about Javeayah and Michilae and their actions. But I will not do that. And I will not do that to protect and maintain the integrity of this case. But I will tell you this. I will not refer to them as mom and dad or mother or father. Amen. They don't deserve that title.
I can't find my baby. That was the 911 call that sent officers, FBI agents, and helicopters into the fields of Aiken County, South Carolina, hunting for a 4-year-old girl in pink Minnie Mouse pajamas. Crews searched for 4 days in dangerous summer heat. They never had a chance. Because according to the arrest warrants, Javeayah Harris had been dead for weeks, and the mother who made that call had, in her own reported confession, already gotten rid of her daughter's body. Hours after she hung up the phone, she was in a delivery room, giving birth to her second child. Everything you are about to hear comes straight from the record. The released 911 audio, the arrest warrants, and the sheriff's own words. And it ends on the one question no document in this case has answered. How does a 4-year-old girl disappear for a month without a single person noticing? She was 4 years old. She lived on Hillsborough Street, near Ridgecrest Road, on the western edge of Aiken County, with her mother, Michilae Herring, and her father, whose surname was also Harris. Javeayah wore her hair in braids fastened with pink beads. Pink was her favorite color, a small detail that would come to mean something to an entire county before this was over. In the recordings and documents that are now public, she surfaces in brief, ordinary flashes. A child who loved being outside, who had one favorite spot in the yard, and who, on the evening she was last claimed to be seen, asked her mother a question every parent has heard 100 times. That question is preserved in the 911 call, which has since been released. Herring dialed just before 9 o'clock on the night of Tuesday, June 30th. She was crying. She said her daughter had been playing outside, that she had gone in to cook dinner, and that when she came back out, quote, "I don't see her nowhere." She said the girl had asked whether she could play a little longer before it got dark, and that she had said yes. She said the bath water was already run in the tub and dinner was still on the stove. When the dispatcher asked where the girl liked to play, she answered that it was usually the chicken coop behind the house. Quote, "And that's usually where I find her every day." When the dispatcher asked about water nearby, she said she did not know, and added, quote, "It's not a good area, I'll tell you that." On its own, it is a completely believable call. The details are specific and domestic. The distress sounds real. Deputies were pulling up before it had even ended. There is only one reason anyone hears that recording differently today, and it has nothing to do with tone of voice or body language, or the kind of armchair analysis that fills up comment sections. It is a set of documents filed in an Aiken County courtroom a little over a week later. We will get to those documents closely. But first you have to understand the size of what that phone call set in motion. What began with a single deputy grew, within a day, into one of the largest child searches Aiken County has ever run. The sheriff's office was joined by the FBI's Columbia Field Office and the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, known as SLED. Drones flew grid patterns over ground no one could cover on foot. K-9 units worked scent trails through the woods. Roadblocks went up on the roads in and out of the neighborhood, and the same doors were knocked on more than once, across search estimates that grew into the thousands of acres. And the working theory, laid out publicly by Sheriff Marty Sawyer, was the simplest one available. She had wandered off. Residents were asked to check sheds, crawl spaces, and underparked cars, anywhere a curious 4-year-old might climb into and get stuck. It was a reasonable theory. It fit every fact investigators had been given. What no one outside the investigation understood yet was that the facts they had been given were about to come apart. If you are new here, this is the exact kind of moment this channel exists for. Quiet Record covers cases like Javeayah's. Only from the record, court documents, released evidence, and named officials. No invented forensics. No speculation dressed up as fact. This case is still moving, with hearings already on the calendar, and I will be following every filing straight from the documents. If you want the truth of this case, and not just the loudest version of it, subscribe now, so the next update reaches you the day it lands. By Friday, 4 days in, the visible search began scaling back. Roadblocks came down. To anyone driving past, it looked like a search running out of places to look. It was not. The work had moved indoors, into interviews, phone records, and timelines laid side by side to see where they stopped matching. That part of an investigation never makes the evening news because there is nothing to film. It is also the part that ends cases like this one. On the morning of Saturday, July 4th, Sheriff Sawyer stood in front of cameras and said what no one who had walked those fields wanted to hear. The evidence led his office to believe Javeayah was deceased, and that she had been dead, in his words, for about a month before the 911 call was ever placed. Both parents were taken into custody that day. Each was charged with homicide by child abuse. Herring was additionally charged with filing a false police report. And I am going to say this plainly here, and mean it every time it comes up. They have been charged, not convicted, and are presumed innocent unless a jury decides otherwise. The next day, both appeared separately before a magistrate. Neither had a lawyer. Both were denied bond, and that was not a judgment call. In South Carolina, homicide by child abuse carries 20 years to life, and a magistrate has no authority to set bond on a charge that's serious. That decision belongs to a circuit court judge. From those hearings came a few ordinary details of an ordinary-looking household. The mother told the court she worked in customer service for about $1,300 every 2 weeks, and that the father worked for a delivery company. It was enough income that the court found them ineligible for a public defender. Their next court date was set for September 18th. Then came Monday, and the arrest warrants became public, and the case changed shape entirely. They were obtained through public records requests and reported by outlets including Word-Dable News 12. Here is what they allege, kept as close to the documents as the reporting allows. They allege that Herring caused severe head injuries to Javeayah through physical abuse. They allege that Harris knew about those injuries and did not seek medical attention for his daughter. They place the events between May 1st and June 15th. They state the information came from confessions both parents made to law enforcement. And in the document supporting the false report charge, investigators allege that Herring admitted disposing of her daughter's body at another location before she ever picked up the phone on June 30th. A confession named in an arrest warrant is a serious thing, but it is also a specific thing, and this channel is going to be precise about it. It is investigators' account of what a suspect told them. It has not been tested by cross-examination, played for a jury, or ruled admissible by a judge, and defense attorneys, once these two have them, can challenge how those statements were taken and what they actually contain. The bar an arrest warrant has to clear is probable cause. The bar a conviction has to clear is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Those are very different standards, and only the first has been met. But the warrants do settle one thing beyond argument, which question this case actually turns on. Not where Javeayah is. The question is what happened in the weeks in between, because a gap that long does not keep itself. Before we go into those weeks, the second of 3 times I will ask, and I will keep it short. When the internet moves on to the next case, this channel will not. I will be reading every filing in this one until there is a verdict, however long that takes. Subscribing is one tap, and it is the difference between this little girl's case being followed to the end or forgotten the week the headlines change. Now, the weeks. Count from the warrant window, and even by the narrowest reading, at least 2 weeks passed between Javeayah's death and that call. And the most uncomfortable fact in this entire case is how easy that gap was to keep. Think about who is actually supposed to notice when a 4-year-old vanishes. A teacher taking attendance? She was too young for school. A pediatrician or a therapist expecting her at an appointment? On the released call, her mother said the family suspected she might be on the spectrum, but that she had never been formally evaluated, which means no standing appointments and no professional watching the calendar for her. Neighbors? The family was new to that street, by their own account on the call, and spoke to no one around them. Extended family? They lived roughly 2 hours away. Every tripwire that normally catches a missing child was slack at the same moment. For a child that young, in a family that new to a place, there is no system watching. The system is other people, and there were no other people close enough. There is research on what happens inside a household when a child is harmed and no one calls for help, and it is worth one restrained minute, not as an excuse, because there is none, but as an explanation of how a gap becomes a month. Researchers who study family violence describe a compounding failure. For a caregiver responsible for an injury, getting medical help and confessing become the same act, because you cannot walk a badly hurt child into an emergency room and not answer questions. So the first day of silence makes the second easier, and every day after raises the cost of the one decision that could have ended it. In cases like this one, that silence tends to hold until some outside event threatens to break it open, and here, that event had a date on it. Herring was 39 weeks pregnant. When a mother is admitted to deliver, staff ask about her other children. Her records showed a living 4-year-old daughter, and that question was days away. Reporting Javeayah missing produced an answer to it, one with law enforcement already attached, ready before anyone in a hospital could ask. And that is what the timeline shows. Herring went into labor and delivered as the search was getting underway. Her newborn has since been placed with a family member, and the South Carolina Department of Social Services is now involved. This is also where Javeayah's case stops being singular, because its shape is not rare. Federal child maltreatment data show that more than 1,500 children die from abuse or neglect in the United States every year, and in most of those deaths, the person responsible is a parent or caregiver, not a stranger. Researchers say even that number is an undercount, because in very young children, without a close investigation, these deaths are often written down as accidents or illness. What makes this case unusual is not what is alleged to have happened inside the house. It is that investigators looked hard enough and moved fast enough to find the truth in days. The month of silence before it, a child gone and no one positioned to ask, is the part that repeats, county after county, year after year. That is the real warning in this story. While the warrants were making headlines, the physical search had quietly moved, about 2 hours north, to water near the Fairfield and Chester County line. Crews concentrated on the Terry Creek access area, which feeds into Rocky Creek Lake on the Catawba River, a reservoir thick with submerged stumps and standing timber, terrain that is brutal for dive teams and nearly useless for sonar. The State Department of Natural Resources brought boats, drones, dogs, and divers, and the single access road was closed to everyone but law enforcement. And in one of the hardest details in this whole case, Wordo reported that some of Javeayah's own family members lived just down the road from that water. Several of them learned of the arrests through social media and arrived at the scene in tears, looking for answers no one could give them yet. Meanwhile, back in Aiken County, investigators returned to the Hillsborough Street house, this time with staff from the coroner's office, and spent 4 hours collecting evidence. One team was looking for Javeayah. The other was looking for proof of what had happened to her before she was ever moved. Then, on Thursday morning, Sheriff Sawyer stepped to the podium one more time, and behind him stood dozens of his own staff, nearly all of them wearing pink. He confirmed that partial human remains had been recovered from the reservoir, which he called Cedar Creek Reservoir, known locally as Stumpy Pond, and that DNA analysis showed them consistent with the biological child of both parents. Javeayah had been found. He also said that forensic evidence and statements revealed deliberate efforts to destroy and conceal evidence after her death, including the use of corrosive chemicals, and that because of those efforts it is unlikely the rest of her remains will ever be recovered. I am not going to dwell on that any longer than the record requires, and neither did he. Both parents now face an additional charge as a result: destruction and desecration of human remains. And then a man with nearly 4 decades behind a badge said 2 things I will give you exactly as he said them. Quote, "In my 37-year career in law enforcement, I've never ever heard of anything so horrific." And then he said he would no longer call the 2 defendants mom and dad or mother and father. Quote, "They don't deserve that title." So here is the record as it stands. Herring is charged with homicide by child abuse, filing a false police report, and destruction and desecration of human remains. Harris is charged with homicide by child abuse and destruction and desecration of human remains. Both are held without bond, and the sheriff's office has said more charges are possible. Homicide by child abuse, as reported in this case, carries 20 years to life, with no parole on a life sentence, and the added charges can be stacked on top rather than served at the same time. But their September 18th date is a status hearing, not a trial. A trial in a case this heavy, with forensic work still underway and confessions that will be fought over, realistically sits a year or more away. And through all of it, the community has refused to go quiet. Vigils downtown and on the family street, a memorial at the mailbox that grows a little every day, strangers showing up, day after day, for a little girl most of them never met. The courtroom will eventually say what the law owes Javeayah Harris, and it will say it slowly, carefully, over many months. But some things do not have to wait for a verdict. She was 4 years old. She had pink beads in her braids. On the last evening anyone claims she was alive, she asked for a little more time outside before it got dark. Every child deserves adults who answer that question honestly. And every child deserves a world that notices, quickly, when they are gone. For a month, nobody did. That is the part of this case that should follow all of us out of this video. One last thing before you go. Cases like this vanish the moment the cameras leave. The hearings happen in half-empty courtrooms, the filings land in a system nobody reads, and a little girl slowly becomes a docket number. That is exactly where this channel does its work. If you subscribe right now, you are not boosting a YouTube channel. You are making sure that on September 18th, and at every hearing after it, someone is still inside that record for Javeayah, reading every document and reporting it back to you straight, with receipts. She was failed by the people closest to her. Do not let her be forgotten by everyone else. Subscribe, and then tell me in the comments, in those weeks of silence, who should have noticed first? I read every one. Rest easy, Javeayah.